Watched Into the Manosphere at the suggestion of one of the people in the comments. Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, I really don't even know what to say. So, we're going to talk about it. I'm going to give you the rundown. I'm going to let you know my thoughts and how it relates to that video that I did on Sunday talking about, are girls conniving? Are boys easier to raise? Right after the intro. And welcome back to another episode of the Daily Donna with me, your host, Dr. Donna, and we are going into the manosphere. I feel like we should be going with binoculars and our weapons and our camouflage. I don't know. It feels like a whole other world because baby, it is. It is. It really is. So, if you have not heard about Into the Manosphere, it is a Netflix documentary done by Louis Theroux. And I'll just read the description. Louis Theroux immerses himself in the world of extreme online influencers and content creators who are redefining modern masculinity. He examines the appeal of these ideas and attitudes and how these figures are influencing young men's values. So I watched it today. Um, yeah, it was difficult to watch, right? Like there were moments I needed to pause. I would say that Louis Theroux, I feel like he didn't really give an opinion one way or the other. Like not like really. He sort of just went with wherever they were. Hang on. Move you back a bit so I can move myself forward and out of this sunlight. So he followed three people, someone named HS, one named Justin, and one named Myron. I might be making things up. Good when that's what happens when you write it. You can't read your own handwriting. It's sad. Um, Watching it was just like seeing the way that people warp a thought until it absolutely means nothing. Um, all of these men have stated that they are not misogynists. All of them said that they love women. As a matter of fact, no, two of them said that they love women. One of them, um, for me, he was the most dis unbelievable, I guess. So HS for me he was the first one that was interviewed, or the first one he spent some time with, and I felt like he was, loud and brash. Um, Clearly, for me, from a therapeutic perspective, um, given that I forgot to introduce myself, I'll do that right now. Hi, Sunshine. I'm Dr. Donna Oriowo, sex and relationship therapist in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Of Drink Water and Mind Your Business, a Black woman's guide to unlearning the BS and healing self-esteem. And what we're talking about is Into the Manosphere, and we are unlearning some of this BS. I think that we needed to have this conversation specifically through a therapeutic lens, but you are going to get a little bit of like mind soup, mind salad, all that stuff that I was already sort of getting into. So let's go ahead and get back into what I was saying, right? So he follows three people: HS, Justin, and Myron. HS to me was probably the least threatening. He's loud, right? I would say that is his thing. He is loud in his actions. He is loud in his throat. He is loud, and he also seems to me the most insecure. Um, the one that, like, he's living this life that is so full of suspicion and like draw near, push far, draw near, push far. He seems like he has the most going on within him. Um, and for me, he was almost like sort of like a comical, like like a comical sort of like he seemed like a butthead, really. I mean, I really don't know how else to explain it without cussing. Um, like he seemed like just this diabolical little villain type, who doesn't necessarily believe everything that he says, but seems to be willing to say whatever he needs to say in order to make money, right? The second one, Justin, he was the one that worries me the most, um, because he seems reasonable, because he's not yelling at the top of his lungs, because he is speaking about things in a way that one could perceive as reasonable, um, because he also seems to be living the life he's talking about. HS, by comparison, seems very young and dumb. Um, Justin seemed almost mature in his foolishness. Um, and I think that piece was scary. Myron is another one that is kind of comical, like he's a comical villain, but he is probably one of the scariest here because of the level and the reach of his influence. Um, and it's wild to see it, right? Because they're all of them are of this idea that men are specifically born without value, and that their value must be attained and gained by way of their productivity and work product. And number one, how sad that the entirety of their value is only based in a capitalistic structure, that their lives have no value, no internal value, they have no intrinsic value. It is only the only value that they have is that which they earn through a capitalist system, and that it is through that capitalist system that they are able to have value. But they believe that women have value, that the value that women have is based in their beauty and in their body parts, right? That inverted triangle of stuff. Right? So in their breasts and betwixt their legs, right? That this is the value of a woman, and that this value is one that can be purchased if a male has capital. That is the thing that would elevate his status, to have more of those who have value born with them. That if they have more of them, that if they have well, not a wife, because a lot of them didn't really believe in allowing the government to have a say, because they like, that's red pill, right? Like, gotta pick your pill, gotta get outside the matrix. So instead, what they're doing is they're one in particular was, I'm like, you're creating this baby, or you're creating babies with these people, and you won't protect them with that piece of paper. That means that they would get something, or they would be entitled to something upon your death. Granted, they could have put a little something else on paper somewhere else, but I wouldn't trust it, because they don't trust. If they are not trusting of anything outside of here, I don't. They trust financial systems, but they don't trust any other system. And like, I felt like this is somewhat reflected in something that Joy Reid said on that podcast, where she said that white men are not going to college at the same rate as white women or anybody else, that their numbers have gone down. And, despite the reversal of affirmative action and all of these other things, that you would think that that would mean there would be more white men wanting to attend these areas that are being, in a sense, brought on and protected for them. But they are not going, and they're not going because they do not want to be in the matrix. And education, apparently, is the matrix. Lord of mercy. So they're trying to get out of the matrix by way of not learning things, but having a lot of money and having a lot of viewers. Whatever. Myron is the last one. He seems so antagonistic. HS and Myron, I think, would even, they sort of give like some of the most antagonistic, almost comically antagonistic toward women. Um, but you could see that they both are yearning for something. Myron, especially, it looks like he's yearning for something. Um, and really, he is, it sounds like what he's yearning for is approval from other men that he is of worth, that he is valuable, and that despite the fact that he also wants, it would seem, the love of a good woman, someone to be there for him and to like him, to love him, that he is willing to throw it away if he can receive the love of a man or the love of various men, for them to pat him on the back and tell him how delightful he is. And then the last one that we see is sort of Sneeko, who apparently was banned from every social media platform with the exception of X. So would post most of his stuff on there and then got unbanned on YouTube, um, which kind of makes me sad because it's sort of what HS said, right? We're in an attention economy. And I was just having this conversation with a friend, and where it comes to these men and the manosphere in general, y'all might not like who I blame. But I'm gonna go ahead and blame it anyway. I blame the 24-hour news cycle. You're asking why. I understand. Let me tell you why. I blame the 24-hour news cycle because it created the idea that there is always something to say. And there is an African proverb, that a fool has to say something and a wise man has something to say. And when the news cycle decided to become the fool instead of stay as one within the space of wisdom, they created the idea of the attention economy, that we can keep your attention for 24 hours and have nothing to say, but give you the same story and make it seem more emergent than it is, make it seem like you have more information than you do. And so you get into a space where people who don't actually have anything to say are constantly effing talking, right? There is no pause, there's no space, there's no be quiet. And it sort of ballooned in this way that everybody needed to have a 24-hour news cycle. You constantly have to have somebody picking up news from here and there and wherever. And what they won't tell you is that the big guys, the big ones that you're watching, that some of their news comes from the smaller local stations or local papers who know what's going on in their neighborhood because they're actually tapped in. So you look at these big news conglomerates as being tapped into the little guy, when in reality, they're tapped into where our attention is already going in our little individual boroughs or provinces or towns or cities. So they're tapped into what we're paying attention to. They're not tapped into what we're tapped into. It's not the same thing. Now, where it comes to that, who do I blame beyond that? Because like, look, therapist here, I don't always believe that we should be assigning blame, but I do believe, as I demonstrated in my book, that you should take a look back and back and back and back and figure out where the origin of something is, right? And I would say there's multiple origins for a lot of this stuff, but to me, it all ends up coming back down to capitalism. Capitalism is not something that is, it's not tenable. It's not something that can have be forever outside without there being very dire consequences. And these, to me, feel pretty freaking dire. Because while they're able to talk about like the importance of the attention economy, what we forget about that is that it means that you need to say things that are inflammatory, that you may or may not believe yourself in order to gain said attention. It means that you do the most, you say the most, and you will put out, like, consider, you've seen headlines for stories that make you click it, right? It's clickable. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this thing is true. And the thing is, it's not true. If you read the story, which half of you don't, be real with yourself, you don't. A lot of people they read the title, They might read the small synopsis that comes after the title, but no one actually clicks all the way through and reads the article. Because if you did, you would see that that was clickbait. They only wrote that thing in that inflammatory comment for attention. And in gaining your attention, they also gained money. That's why I say I also blame capitalism, because these guys of the manosphere are the same. I don't know that they believe in the thing that they're saying, but I do believe that they are having inflated egos by way of the attention and admiration that they receive from young boys. I believe that they get to have an idea of self-esteem, not true self-esteem, right? We're not talking about secure self-esteem. There are 4 types of self-esteem. And I would say that theirs is more in a vacant space, more than anything, maybe with a touch of fragile. So fragile self-esteem is I must perform for the likes and the cares and the views and the other thing, and that makes me feel important. But vacant self-esteem is you don't think that people will like you. I also think that those people are willing to risk it all. And I think that these people in the manosphere are certainly some of the ones that are willing to risk it all, because they don't even have to think about the consequences, the long-term consequences of some of the stuff that they're saying. And none of them have done their own internal work to figure out what they actually believe. What they know is what gets your attention. So they don't even have self-esteem, right? They have a performance. If you don't know yourself, you cannot esteem yourself. Remember, I've been saying this to you, which is why I would say that they are more likely to have some level of vacant self-esteem. They don't know themselves, so they're performing. They've created a dance that they believe that other people will want to see, and now they must sustain it at all costs, which sometimes means let me hide this other piece of my life. Let me hide this piece of my truth. Let me shut down anybody from learning anything additional, because if they learned more, they might see me as something a little bit less, and I can't afford for someone to see me in that way. Right? So, goodness. So why do I blame capitalism? I blame capitalism because when you suffer your people to be ill-educated, their manners corrupted from, let me stop. If you knew where that line came from, tell me in the comments below. It was in a recent video. But when you suffer your people, like legitimately, when you do suffer your people to be ill-educated, their manners corrupted from infancy, what is to be seen other than you first create thieves and then you punish them? And in this case, you create the conditions for people to thieve attention through lies, through saying the most inflammatory things, which then become a norm in our society to hear inflammatory things consistently being said, that these are the things that get our eyes, these are the things that get our ears, right? So we are ingesting this thing and it becomes a norm. So then everything now must inflate itself also to a level of being inflammatory in some way in order to gain traction in an attention economy. And then you have these things that have also sliced attention span and have also further denigrated people's ability to cognitively to have great cognitive functioning, to have comprehension. Comprehension is at an all-time low. But so people don't even understand half of the stuff that they are ingesting. And then they're regurgitating it because you watch yourself work this 9 to 5 at the like minimum wage that has never kept pace with the cost of living. They've literally put almost the entirety of life behind the paywall. You can't afford to have fun. Right? You can't afford to love your friend. People can't afford to have kids, right? Can't afford a home. They sell you the idea of the American dream. Say, here, if you do these things, you too can have these riches. And then you do all that, and all you do is find that you're in debt and unable to even have the life that you want. So you're in a space of almost constant mourning, while older generations tell you about how your generation are full of degenerates and that y'all are the reason that we can't have nice things, while taking no accountability, no responsibility for how they have messed things up so far. And then you see influencers on social media. You see these people who have figured out the attention economy and who are using it to actually financially enrich themselves, and that they don't have the education that you paid for, right? They don't have the debts that you have. So you see them living this better life, forgetting, because also social media literacy is also at a low, forgetting that people are showing you snippets of their life, just snippets. And it's the highlight reel. No one is showing the lows. They're only showing what's great. I would say the person that's talking about the lows now more than anyone is Kev on Stage with his podcast, Not My Best Moment, right? So you have people who are constantly telling you about the goodness, the greatness, the awesome thing that they did, and showing you the riches and the cars, the clothes, the million bottles of perfume, all the makeup that they have. You're watching these people who were online celebrities in a sense, right? You're watching your social media celebrities become actual celebrities, because there is, the gatekeepers have not been able to gatekeep them out of the celebrity space. You're watching them have this money, and you're looking and you're wondering how, right? And some people have, I would say, figured out this part of the system. They don't see hope in the other way. They don't see being able to gain, what they say, gain value, that value that they got to earn in order to have the women who have the intrinsic value betwixt their knees, right? Like, so why wouldn't the manosphere be exactly what the doctor ordered for somebody who is not sure that they will be able to make it otherwise, in a country that also does a really great job of devaluing everybody and turning them into labor, only seeing their value as related to their productivity. So I'm looking like, so you mean the country did it first and then all these other things sort of sprung from it, right? And then the 24-hour news cycle helped to create the idea of the attention economy. So I'm just like, oh, okay. How then were we supposed to get anywhere else? Like, do I believe that these people, HS, Justin, Myron, and Sneeko, do I believe that they have responsibility and accountability here? Absolutely. And their mothers and their fathers. And that's the part that's also kind of like ironic to me, right? Like, they, for the most part, have absentee fathers. And it reminds me of something that Mr. Boothang said to me a while back. He was just like, despite the fact that the mom was there, present, feeding them, making sure that they had everything they need, they still idolized their absentee fathers. And they yearn for them in such a way that they would recreate the trashness of these dudes' lives and harm women while unironically saying that they love women as long as they get to be a dictator, and that they love women and that they know better than women, unironically. That everybody can basically reduce down to their money, their height, their body count. I mean, HS said it in this documentary. He said, if I had just did good things, I never would have blown up. That is the attention economy. People don't have to, like, being good at the thing that you do is not enough. When you say something inflammatory, you can certainly get there faster. Do I believe that Tommy Lauren, for example, I don't know if y'all remember that blonde woman from way back then, do I believe that she believed half the stuff that she was saying? Absolutely not. Do I believe that Kevin Samuels believed the things that he was saying? No, he wasn't with a high value woman in the end of it all, right? And he didn't start off like that. I don't think any of them started off like that. This is something that they learned worked, and then they bought into their own hype. And I think that that's also why Justin feels scary to me, because it doesn't seem like he's necessarily fully living the thing that he says. I think that Myron was also almost not living the thing that he said. And because it ended up in this documentary, he dropped her. I think that these people will be unhappy in their last days. They have reduced their value down to $1. And I recognize also that when we're talking about what dating looks like these days, people are reducing people's value down to $1. And that is also a function of capitalism. I think that capitalism dehumanizes us, and we get into the same space of dehumanizing us, and we call it a means for survival. Where what I really think that the secret here is that if we reject the idea of our only value being wallet bound, being bank account bound, that if we reject the notion and we treat each other with respect, with care, that the people who are in positions of power, they're only there because we allow them to be. If we reminded them of this in a large way, gosh, do I think that we could shake the world? I really and truly do. Because there are more of us than there are of them. And we are the ones that dictate what has value by what it is that we chase. And I get it. Like, so many of us have based our lives, ourselves, our dreams off these things that they told us that we should want and we should dream about. Um, I think also, like low key, high key sort of reminds me of Target. Now we're going to go on this journey together because I'm not really sure where it's going. But like with Target, I think about like how they presented a DEI front. Like, we are so DEI down, that we are down with Black people, that we are inclusive, and that no one's ever going to stop us. And then this dude gets into the White House, and it didn't even take much for them to abandon us. Right? I think that for some of us, we felt that distancing, that abandonment, and it felt like a slap in the face. And there's a reason why it doesn't feel like what Walmart did. It doesn't feel like what Walmart did because Walmart never was riding for us in the first place. When someone says that they ride for you, when someone says that they are with you, and when you're watching them also give deals or make deals with people in the Black community and uplifting them, and we're watching their pockets also be uplifted, and we're feeling proud and loved and seen and cared for, we're willing to give everything that we have to those people. And when they renege, because that's what it was, this is a game of spades, baby. They reneged, and it's like, oh, I hate you for life. It's like, oh, we are never getting back together. It is, I'm not on a break, we broke up. Right? It's this piece of it, this, I don't know that anyone feels particularly betrayed by the people in the manosphere, except the people who maybe are closest to those people, who thought that they were. I think some of these women are trying to find their self-esteem there. I think that yes, there is some sort of like using each other for the attention economy, but also I think that some of them are like, well, I'll be the one to change his mind. I'll be the one that is so special that he'll leave this thing behind, and he'll treat me like a person, that the stuff he's saying is not how he'll actually live. I'm special enough for him to change. And that to me also is a self-esteem problem. In the end of the day, what I'm seeing is people with vacant self-esteem who had the means to get a mic and spew nonsense all over the internet because they didn't have to do any work to heal themselves, but also that we have created the atmosphere for this type of thing to survive, with mothers who raised their daughters but loved their sons, with mothers who tell you that boys are easier to raise, and who tell them that girls are conniving. And there was a comment, and it's a long one, so can't put the whole thing up here, but basically talking about like some of this is also steeped in the Judeo-Christian ethics that the country was founded on, whether or not you want to say that or not. That whether or not you are actually Christian, you may still be culturally Christian, having been raised here in the Adam and Eve story of it all, and the idea that women are conniving as it relates to that snake, right? Like as it relates to being kicked out of Eden, that this is something that even religion has, pushed forward as a reasoning for not trusting women. When I think that getting kicked out of heaven had more to do with the fact that if you refuse to take responsibility for yourself, then I can't mess with you. Cause that's what I feel like it was, right? Like Eve blamed the snake, Adam blamed Eve and God. Just like the woman you gave me, right? And so I ate some. He knew he wasn't supposed to eat from that tree. He knew, because God told him. We never got the story about whether or not God told her. But we do know that God told him, which means that it was his responsibility to tell her, don't eat from that. But he was curious. He also wanted to eat, and he thought he would be able to shift blame. I think that what we're seeing now is the continuation of shifting blame, and people who are so self-interested, who are so only worried about what they can gain, what they can get, how they can defer or deflect blame, responsibility, accountability. I think that all of these things also help to create the systems that allow the manosphere to even be what it is. So, bravo. Many of us are accountable to this nonsense. The lack of willingness to do one's work, to examine one's stuff, to, sometimes to even just call the thing out. The lack of willingness that men have to just admit that they are scared of men. And so they sort of fall in line because, let's be real, they're scared of men. So when they talk about provision and protection, I'm looking like, you need protection for men too. We hear you. The whole thing, just more than anything, it just makes me sad. And watching Into the Manosphere, it was sad. It was sad to see. I can see exactly how executive functioning skills can be lacking, how they are not taught them, and how the world is so willing to bend to the man who says such nonsense and is just allowed to sort of just get by with it. Now, one in I don't know when, but soon I'll be doing one about like, what is it like dating the man who didn't get the executive functioning skill? Because I really think that that is the conversation that we need to have, and it's something certainly that I see as a couples therapist. Right, it's something that I see in the relationships, the way that one partner lacking in executive functioning can really fuck it all up. So I definitely want to talk about that. But if you have seen Into the Manosphere, what were your thoughts? Um, I would, there's a part of me that wants to say don't bother on the watching of it, but go ahead, watch it. But then consider what you got, and consider how you feel about what you got. Because what I got is that these people are raised by the parent that stayed, they're single mothers, and still don't respect women, which I think is that's quite a feat. I mean, how did you get there, right? Yeah, I think that their trauma has been largely not closely examined, if examined at all. And that because they have a microphone, they're now allowed to place their trauma out for other people to have to deal with. Um, I think that it reminds me of the man who purchased Twitter because he couldn't get any friends. I think it reminds me of the man who created Facebook because he couldn't get any friends because he couldn't get any girls, and that he created Facebook to rate women, not just because he was misogynistic, but because he was bitter. And that these bitter boys, whom nobody liked, were able to raise enough capital so that somebody could pretend to like them. I think that even they know that the friendship, the love, the women you buy, that they will go as soon as the money goes, which means that whatever love they're still looking for, they still ain't found it, and that they will destroy us all in pursuit of the thing that they've always been missing, that could probably be helped with a therapy, with a therapist, with a therapy appointment, and maybe with a real friend who tell them that what they're doing is destructive in the nth degree. But those are just my thoughts. I want to know yours. In the meantime, I am Dr. Donna. This is the Daily Donna, and you know we have those conversations with the therapeutic age. So go ahead and let me know what your thoughts on Into the Manosphere and what you're going to do with some of those thoughts. All right, you're the bee's knees. I will see you when tomorrow, because this is the Daily Donna. Bye.